snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so I am here today to do a book review, and the book that I'm going to be reviewing is the first one in the Liveship Traders series by Robin Hobb. This is Ship of Magic, and I read this as a buddy read and also as part of the TBR takedown, so I'll put a link to all the people I buddy read it with down below. And I really love this book. It's definitely my favourite Hobb book so far. I think it's a massive improvement on the last Hobb book I read, which I only gave 2 stars to. So I ended up giving this a 5 out of 5 stars. It was awesome, and let's talk about what it was all about. As with most Robin Hobb books, it's a very slow read. She does like to write very long, very slow books that very gradually you build upon. So it is a slow read, and I wouldn't recommend it if you don't like slower reads. However, it's one of those stories that because it's a slow read, you really get a thorough understanding of the characters within the story, and you really get to know them, and you get to understand their lifestyle, you get to understand the culture that they adhere to, and the beliefs that they have, and the customs that they have, which are all very important in this story in particular. It's a very slow story, which is more than made up for the fact that you understand things so thoroughly by the end, and the build-up is so fantastically done. So it focuses mostly on various different characters who are traders, and it gradually develops our understanding of them and their ways. It's set in a different part of the world to the Vivacia books, but it's not too far away. They still kind of have heard news from the section where the Vivacia books are set, so they're within a distance where news can travel, but they're not that close. Like, you couldn't travel there in a few days or anything like that. It would be a long voyage. And it's set on the cursed shores, which doesn't sound like the nicest place to live. And we join the story when there is a fair amount of outside interference, which is starting to kind of invade and encroach upon the community who live on the cursed shore already, which is the Liveship Traders. We see that they are slowly kind of being torn from their customs, and people are integrating into their society who are questionable and bring new ideas and new customs that the original traders might not necessarily like. This is a book which clearly puts the characters first. Despite it being 880 pages, not a lot actually happens in terms of the plot. There are things that do happen that are very important, but overall the plot I could describe to you in a few minutes and it would be pretty simple, whereas the characterization and the development of characters would take all 880 pages, as Robin Hobb did. Because of this, I feel like each of those characters that we meet, I know them so well that I would know how they would react in certain situations, and I understand them a lot more than most other fantasy characters, where it's a plot-focused book or a magic-focused book. This is certainly character-focused. The world building of this book I felt was more interesting than that of the Vivacia books, because this one is based largely at sea, and we are kind of on ships most of the time, although we do follow some of the people who stay at home whilst the voyages are going on. The old traders of Bingtown basically all trade up and down the shore with various different people, and they trade in various things, and they're also the owners of live ships, and live ships are basically ships where the figurehead on the very front of the boat has come to life because it's been made out of wizard wood, and over many years slowly this wizard wood starts absorbing the thoughts of the people who own the boat, and gradually it gets to a point where they know enough to come to life. So the figurehead of the ship comes to life and has various thoughts from different members of the family who have served on the ship's deck before. So it's a long process to waken up a ship, but it's definitely worth it in the long run, because a live ship is a lot better than a regular ship in that you don't have very many accidents, because the live ship can sense all of its rigging and things like that, so it will ensure that everything is tied right, and it will tell the crew if it needs anything done. So it's a lot of a safer journey, and it's a lot better of a journey, because most people don't tend to come near live ships and they don't tend to attack them or anything like that. It's a good profession to have, but it's an expensive one to start up. I love the idea of the live ships. I think that was such a cool idea that she came up with, and it just felt really interesting to me and something different from what I'd read. I also became really interested in the trade that they conducted and the way that they organised things on the live ships. Not only this, but also the figurehead of the ships are really interesting as a character in their own right, even though they are based on the memories of the family members who have served on their decks. That's what originally quickens them and brings them to life. They are actually really interesting characters in their own right, and when they first quicken, they're quite like a newborn child, so you have to kind of nurture them into their role, and I think it's really interesting to see them develop. And after their quickening, how they're treated kind of can shape the way that they grow and the way that they come into themselves. Some live ships will actually go completely mad if either their family gets killed or something goes really wrong or if something terrible happens on board their decks, then they can go completely insane because of the grief and the bond between the live ship itself and the captain of the ship, who's a member of the family. It always has to be a member of the family, like a blood member of the family, who is on board a live ship, otherwise they won't operate. So there's some really interesting things that Robin Hobb came up with as ideas, and I thought it was really incredible the way she did that. We're also introduced to the Bingtown traders who stay at home. They are the ones who don't necessarily go on the voyages, but they are the ones who stay at home. They organise all the money, they sort out the trading and things like that, and we focus largely on one particular family. We also get glimpses of the Rainwild traders, who are really, really mysterious and intriguing, and definitely one of the things that I loved most about the book and wanted to know more about. I know that one of her later series is called the Rainwild Chronicles, and I believe that's a 4-book series, so after reading this book and being introduced a little bit to the Rainwilds, I really, really want to read that series so much because I think it's going to be so interesting and I can't wait to find out more about them. Pirates and slavery are very big themes within this book. We get to see a lot of slavery and a lot of pirating, and we actually follow a character who is a pirate. But slavery definitely seems to be a massive theme in this book, and whether it's right or wrong to take away someone's freedom is certainly a kind of undertone theme throughout the book, which I feel was handled really, really well. Everyone knows that a live ship will only work for the family that it is bonded to, but one of the pirates who we do end up meeting in this book, called Kennit, has different ideas about this, and even though he knows there's a risk of the ship going mad, he wants a live ship for himself. The final element I want to point out before I go into the characters is that we also follow serpents in this book, because obviously we're based at sea. We have serpents who swim in the sea, very, very giant, and they're quite terrifying as creatures. They're quite dark and quite sinister, and we don't really know a lot about them. We just get snippets here and there in the book where we see their thoughts and we see what they're doing, but it's all very mysterious, and I don't think I fully understand yet what Robin Hobb is trying to do with the serpents. But I do think it's something quite interesting, and it could possibly tie in with the Vivacia books, I'm not sure. So I'm looking forward to seeing where the storyline for the Serpents goes, but at the moment it's mostly the human characters who are really, really interesting to me, and the live ships. So as for the characters, we have Althea Vestrit, who is one of the major characters. She is a young lady serving on board the Vivacia, which is her family live ship. It's not come to life when the story begins, but it does soon after. She's a somewhat competent sailor. She's not the best sailor out there, and she is a little bit spoiled because she knows that when her father retires, she will be able to take over the ship. Everything will be grand. She's bold and daring as a character, but she also has some flaws with entitlement. She definitely thinks that she is entitled to have the ship after he dies or after he is retired, which isn't necessarily the case. When her father is sick for a very, very long time, which we find out right at the beginning of the story, and he hasn't actually been on board, she has been sailing with her brother-in-law, whom she doesn't really get along with, and her story starts to take on a different direction from that which she has always believed it will. She's always believed she's going to be the one to take over after he dies, and things don't necessarily go the way that she hopes. I enjoyed Althea's story a lot, even though she wasn't necessarily my favourite of the characters. I liked seeing her grow, and I liked seeing her develop, and I liked seeing her learn new skills and acquire new talents. She's definitely got a way to go still, and I think her character is one of those characters that she grew on me. The more I read about her, the more interested I became in her character. Next we have the Paragon, who is an old live ship. He used to be a great live ship, and unfortunately something terrible happened. We don't really know what, but something terrible happened that drove him mad, and since then he has capsized a couple times purposefully to kill the crew that he had on board. He's also done terrible things besides that, so he's unfortunately been moored up on the beach for a very long time by Bingtown, and no one likes to go near him because they think he's cursed, and he doesn't ever go out to sea. And he's just a very strange old character. He's very sad, he's very forlorn, he doesn't have a lot of friends or people who visit him on a regular basis, so he's quite lonely, and he's also very old, so he's starting to get a bit forgetful too. I really enjoyed that the ships themselves had personalities. I think that was one of the most interesting elements for me, and every time I read a section that was a live ship, I found it really enjoyable. Paragon is a character who scenes instantly gripped me and hooked me into the story. I feel like there's something more that's going to happen with him, and I feel like he's a character whom I was very excited to read every time a scene came in with him at the forefront of it, and I also enjoyed his very bitter nature that he has. Next we have Vivacia, who is the Vestrit's live ship. She begins by not being quickened, but as I said, she does become quickened, which is basically coming to life very early on in the story, and the events that happen on the ship are definitely a big influence on her and the way that she develops as a character. Once she has become quickened, she realises that things are not how she believed that they were going to be. Events have unfolded in a completely different way from that which she always expected, and there's actually a lot more hardship and a lot more terror being alive than there was just being a hunk of wood. I really enjoyed Vivacia's storyline because her sections we got to see some of the memories of some of the past Vestrits, and that was really cool. And she also shows us how it is to be born into the life of a live ship and the toll that this can exact upon the ship themselves. Then we have Braschen, who was Captain Vestrit's, Althea's father's first mate. He was a well-beloved member of the Vivacia crew, and he's a very kind and loyal member of the crew. He definitely has served his life happily on board the Vivacia, and when he sees things are turning sour, he thinks the best thing for him to do is kind of get off the ship and go his own way. Unfortunately, of course, things are not that simple, and some of the things from the Vestrit ship do end up following him. Braschen is one of the few characters who is actually a friend to Paragon, and I really like seeing their relationship together. He's also a character who knows his job, and he does it thoroughly and he does it well, and he's a very conscientious character whom I really enjoyed seeing. Next we have Kyle Haven, who is the brother-in-law to Althea. I really disliked him. He was definitely the bad guy in my opinion. I think he was definitely horrible. Like, he did some things that I just did not agree with, and I hated him for it, and I really had a strong passionate hatred for him. He's a very capable sailor, and he knows it and he flaunts it, and he's quite uppity. He's also very ruthless, and he believes that it's his way or the highway. You can either do it the way that he believes it should be done, or you are completely wrong. He was always unable to see other people's points of view. He was always very set in his own way, and for that he was just such an irritating character, but I really enjoyed reading about him because he always causes conflict and problems, which obviously is fun to read. Next we have Keffria Vestrit, who is the sister of Althea and the wife to Kyle. She lives at home with her mother whilst Kyle and Althea have been off sailing, and she loves her husband, she admires her husband, and she's always deferred to him in everything. She's also a very kind and conscientious character. I did enjoy her characterisation a lot because she started off quite weak-minded, and as the events of the book unfolded and things that she believed were tested, she kind of grew some resolve and some more determination and became more of a hardened and more interesting character for that, so I really liked her development. Then we have Wintrow, who is the oldest child of Kyle and Keffria. He is a true member of the Vestrit blood, and he is in training to be a priest of Sa from when he was very little. So when we see him in the story, he's 14 years old, but he's been in training to be a priest of Sa since he was very young, about 7. He believes strongly in Sa's teachings, and he always tries to do the thing that he believes is right and the best thing for everyone. I think he's one of the people that I most easily connected with because his character was really likeable, and his character definitely held to the strong morals that he'd developed in his short life. And I think he was very loyal, and he stuck true to what he believed in despite a lot of pressure from the outside, so I really enjoyed that. Then we have Ronica Vestrit, who is Althea and Keffria's mother, so she is the grandmother to Wintrow. She is a very strong-willed character. She has always had to look after the family's finances whilst her husband has been off sailing on Vivacia, so she's very strong-willed and she knows how to handle the household and she knows how to take care of everything. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are completely well off. They've had a lot of strife and a lot of struggles in their lifetime, and she's barely making ends meet at the moment when we find the story. She's very kind and she's very competent at what she does, and she always tries to keep up appearances and do the best thing for the family. I think I enjoyed her a lot because when we first met her, she was quite a harsh person and a harsh character, but as she faced more and more trials, we actually get to peel back some of the layers of her personality, and we get to see her evolve and we get to see her softer side, which I really enjoyed seeing. and I really felt like was more interesting. She always tries to do the best thing, and sometimes she makes mistakes, but she's willing to admit that she has made mistakes, which I did think was a great personality trait. Then we have Malta, who is the daughter of Keffria. She's the younger sister of Wintrow, and she is a really seriously spoiled young girl. She wants things to be her way, and if they're not her way, she will throw a tantrum, she will get upset, she will be irritating, and she will do it anyway just to spite people. She follows very firmly in her father's ways of doing things. She believes it should be her way or the highway. She's silly, she's foolish, she makes a lot of mistakes, but I found her character fascinating to read about because she was very convincingly about 12 years old or whatever she's meant to be. She did convince me that she was that character, and I felt like even though she did a lot of things that really irritated me and really annoyed me, I enjoyed her storyline still, and I still sympathised with her despite her being this annoying, irritating child, because she fits the role that she is supposed to play, and I found her really enjoyable. She has some very interesting things that go on with her storyline as well, so pretty intrigued to see what happens next with her. And then finally we have Captain Kennit, who is the pirate who is on board a completely different ship, and he is a very ruthless pirate. At the beginning of the book he hears a prophecy about himself, and he goes on to kind of try and fulfill this prophecy, and he has more than anything all of his life he has wanted to claim for himself a live ship, and so he acts upon this, and throughout the book we kind of follow his adventures as he attempts to try and take over a live ship, which is something most pirates do not attempt to do because they know that it's probably not a good idea. He's definitely a bit bloodthirsty, and he definitely does what needs to be done in order to get what he wants, but I did enjoy seeing the development of his character as well. So, those are all of the major characters. There's a distinct range and collection of different characters. We get to see all different types of people, and yet they are all connected together in various different ways, which I found was really fascinating. Because we've had such thorough development of the characters in this book, I feel like the pacing of the next two books will hopefully, fingers crossed, get quicker, although I'm not sure if that will be the case because Robin Hobb does write long books. And I hope that we'll learn a little bit more in the future books about the plot and where the plot is going, because I feel like there were some plots that ended a little bit earlier than I would have liked them to in this book, so I'm hoping that we get to see further into the future and further with what's going to happen next, as opposed to a lot of characterization. But on the whole, I thought this was excellently written. I thought the characterization was stunning. I don't think I've read a book with as brilliant characters in a long time, and I think that this is a series that I much preferred to the Vivacia books. Even though I like the first two of the Vivacia books, I didn't like them anywhere near on the same level as this one, so I did give this one a 5 out of 5 stars, and as did everyone in the buddy reading group, so that was awesome. We all gave it 5 stars and we all loved it, and we had a lot of great discussions about this book, so that was fantastic. So I'd love to hear you guys and your thoughts on this book and this series if you guys have read it, because I know there's a lot of mixed opinions about whether or not people like this, and I was very happy to say that I was one of the people who loved it. But I have heard that some people really don't, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on this series. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all very soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about the